wanted to make a quick video that you can use to in the future to refer back to. See, today we're going to learn how to take a specific kind of notes called KWLQ. And I want you to be able to have this video as a resource later on because we're going to be doing these notes with every reading that we do this semester. So if I assign a reading for homework, you'll also have to do a KWLQ notes worksheet with it. And you can always come back to this video. I'll attach it to that assignment all the time to kind of see how that is done. We'll also be practicing it in class today, and you can use this video as a guidance with your groups to go back and say, what did Bonnie say about how to do the KWLQ notes? So today we're going to be learning that note-taking approach. I like it because it's quick, it's easy, and it's effective for engaging our minds. So I'm sure you've heard from many teachers in the past, note-taking is important. But why? Why is it important? It's important because when we simply read without engaging the text, nothing sticks. And that sucks for us, especially if we don't have a lot of time. A lot of us have lots of other classes to read for. And when we simply read something and then get stuck not understanding it, we're reading it again and again and again. And it's basically a waste of time. We want to be able to read something and understand it the first time around. And note-taking helps with that. But note-taking isn't always straightforward. So I like the KWLQ approach because it tells us exactly when to take notes and how to take notes. And with that guidance, we can do it very quickly and easily. So again, the reason we take notes is to get our brain ready to consume information and then engage in that consumption of information so it sticks. You know, studies have shown that when we are prepping our mind for it, more time is spent understanding than trying to figure out what we've just read. So if you want to be a fast, efficient reader, the KWLQ approach can make things go by very quickly for you, and you'll still retain all the information that you read. So let's take a look at it. I'll share my screen. All right. So this is the KWL worksheet. You'll always have the ability to download one, or you can download as many as you want and hold on to them. There's 4 sections to the KWLQ sheet, and they each have their own purpose. So know is, what do you know about the topic before you read? So what information do you already have? This helps your brain start to kind of focus on that topic. And when you start to read, information will stick because your brain's already looking for that information. So it helps us kind of settle in to begin to chew on the useful information in the reading. This will help you from having to read pages over and over again because you didn't understand it, because your brain wasn't prepped for it. So here we write what we already know. One of the ways you do this is you can, if you have a big, long reading, skim the whole reading. Read the title. What is that about? What do I already know about? You don't have to read the whole thing yet. You're just kind of like saying, what is this going to be about? Or if you have a specific assigned section, like let's say my teacher assigned just these 2 paragraphs. I'll just read the subheadings. What do we mean by critical reading, and what is credibility? So I'll begin by saying, what do I already know about the topic? Then what do I want to know? Again, this happens before we read. Knowing that this is the topic, what do I want to learn about that? I might ask some questions here or just write down a statement of what I expect to learn. Then we go ahead and we read. And then after we're done reading, or as we're reading, either way, you write down what you learn. So you're writing down, I discovered this. I learned this. I didn't know this before. I learned this. So things that we didn't know before, we're writing down here. And then the last part happens after you're done reading. What questions do you still have? So let me model this for you, right? So let's say my teacher assigned just these 2 paragraphs for me to read. And I'm going to start my note-taking process. So the first thing I want to do is, before I actually read these, I want to talk about what I already know about the topic. So let's look. I'm just going to look at the subheadings here. What do we mean by critical reading, and what is credibility? So I'm going to write down over here, what do I already know about critical reading and credibility? And you don't have to write whole sentences. You can write bullet points, that kind of stuff. It's just your ideas. About critical reading, I know that it requires rhetorical reading skills. I know to read critically, I need to figure out who the author is and who the audience is, so I can figure out why they are writing and what their purposes are. So that's something I know about critical reading. I could write more things, but I think that's enough for now. Credibility. I know that credibility has to do with the author's background and expertise in the topic. All right. See, it doesn't have to be a lot. You can write more. It's up to you. I will say that the more you're thinking about it, the more your brain is prepared for it. So I'm doing this, the know, before I get reading. Also, the want to know happens before I get reading. So what do I want to know? I want to know if there are any quick, easy strategies for critical reading. Is there a way I can do this quickly? I also want to know if there is anything more to look for when determining credibility of a source. Like, I know it's about their expertise and topic. I have heard that figuring out if a source for reading is biased is important to credibility, but I'm not sure how exactly. Okay. So I wrote down some things that I want to know. Now I'm going to have to read. So I'm going to pause my video, and it's probably going to jump really quickly, but I'm going to take a few minutes to read, and I don't want to like just have the video playing while I read. And when I'm done reading, I'm going to write down the things that I learned. So I'll see you in a split second. Bye. Okay, guys. So now I'm done reading. I discovered these two little paragraphs. They're just kind of introductory paragraphs. So they have some information, but not a lot. But still, I've learned some things. Like, I actually learned that what critical reading means. So critical reading is, and since I'm going to quote directly from them, I'm just going to go ahead and put it in quotes, is focused, purposeful, and deep reading practices. I have a habit of, I just make it my habit to always cite my sources. Even when I'm taking notes, it keeps me in the loop, and it's a good habit to do. It just becomes natural to me. So I encourage you guys to also naturally practice citing your sources. If it's language that's directly from the source of the reading, put in quotations and put the page number. It's a good habit. So I learned that critical reading is focused, purposeful, and deep reading practices. I also learned that reading for credibility is part of critical reading. So reading for credibility is part of the critical reading process. I didn't realize that. And then they did talk a little bit about this thing called lateral reading. There is this strategy called lateral reading that is where you read many sources to determine the credibility of, let me move this down, credibility of one source. They didn't go into much detail about that. I think they'll do it later on in the reading. So I have some questions already forming in my mind about that. And then I learned that credibility is, what it means is trustworthiness, which is a little bit different than I was defining it. I was like the background, but I like this, the background that we trust, because we can look up the background of a source, but what makes that background good or bad depends on whether or not we can trust them. So I like that. It actually helped further my understanding of credibility. It's about being trustworthy. So here's some things that I learned just from reading these two little paragraphs. Now I'm looking for some questions. So I'm almost done with my notes. Oops. And so now I'm going to write down some questions that I have. So the first one is, how exactly does lateral reading, which is the last strategy they were talking about, help you determine credibility. Because they didn't really talk in depth about it here, I still have that question. Why is credibility part of critical reading? They didn't really, I think, talk too much. They just said it was, but they didn't kind of give an explanation, and I would like to know more about that. And that's those are the questions I'm left with. I can't think of any other questions based off what I learned. I guess just are there other strategies beyond lateral reading for determining credibility? What are they? Because I don't want to just have one strategy. I like to have many in case one just doesn't work for me. Like, what if I'm not a good lateral reader? Okay, and so now I am finished with my notes. This is the KWLQ worksheet, and it helped me understand what I'm reading, process that information, and now I have a set of notes that if we were to have a discussion on this reading, I can actually just go back to these notes really quickly and be like, hey, I'm going to pick out this really interesting thing I learned, or I wanted to know this and they never discussed this, or I still have some questions for the teacher. I still have some questions about the reading. This is especially helpful if you have classes where the teacher wants to have a discussion about the reading. These notes give you stuff to talk about, and you can always begin a discussion by something saying, I have a question. As I was done reading, I was left wondering, like, are there other strategies? And doing this will make you not only like an effective reader, but the kind of student who can actively participate in class, which teachers love, especially if you're like trying to like really develop a good relationship with your teachers, maybe even ask them for recommendation letters. This thing can help you in so many ways by making you that actively engaged, participating student, but also the student who knows what the reading is because you have this really cool set of notes. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. I hope that you can come back to this video if you have questions about it or want to kind of see how it's done, and get ready because we're going to be practicing this over the rest of the course of the semester. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope that you have fun trying out your first KWLQ sheet with your groups in a little bit.